survive together.
Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm here with my review today of Star Trek Section 31. This is the new Paramount Plus straight-to-streaming movie. Back in the old days, they would just say TV movie. But this is the spin-off of Star Trek Discovery, starring Michelle Yeoh, reprising her role as Philippa Georgiou. And it was supposed to be a series, and now it's a movie. And unfortunately, it is a big mess. Yeah, man, I wish this was a lot better than it is. It took years for this to happen. They had announced many years ago that there was going to be a spinoff of Discovery starring Michelle Yeoh. That sounded great. She was great on the show. She's always great. And then it took so many years to happen. At one point, it was going to be 2 seasons ordered ahead of time, so they were going to film them back to back. Kept getting delayed for many reasons, including COVID and the fact that Michelle Yeoh was filming Shang-Chi, and then that movie got prolonged because of COVID, and so they had to push. They kept pushing to the point that Michelle Yeoh became an Oscar-winning actress, and suddenly this show probably just kind of got pushed to the side. And the fact that they're even doing the TV movie, I guess, is something, because at a certain point you felt like, well, they're just going to skip it altogether. So they did do this, but it does not come together very well. So we pick up here with Yeoh reprising her role as Georgiou, who, again, for those who might not remember or don't watch Star Trek Discovery, is from the Mirror Universe. And she was the Emperor of the Mirror Universe. So she was pretty much a bad guy when introduced. But now she is in the central prime Star Trek universe. And she is recruited again. She already worked for Section 31, who is kind of the spy organization, but she's recruited again for help. And there is some sort of doomsday device out there that she has some familiarity with. And she joins a new group for her, and they go out on this mission to save everybody. This movie has a lot of problems. And it's funny, I was thinking about Moana 2, watching it, because Moana 2 got a lot of criticism for the fact that it was, until a year ago, going to be a series, and then they turned it into a movie. And I felt like some people went a little overboard with their criticism, saying, well, you can feel that. You can feel that this was a TV show that got chopped up or slammed together as a movie, and they cut a lot of things out. I didn't think it was as apparent as some people made it out to be. Maybe a little bit. But, I thought that by and large, there are some issues with Moana 2, but I didn't think it was as glaring as some said that, well, there was supposed to be a lot more episodes here to tell this story. I felt that a lot, though, with Section 31. I don't know exactly how much of the original story got retained here. They wrote a lot of scripts. Like I said, they were going to shoot 2 seasons of the show at one point. But it felt like something that should have been a series, should have at least been a mini-series to properly tell its story, because so much just feels, I don't know, so hollow, and like we barely get to know these characters. She joins this new crew, and, a lot happens as far as, events in this hour and 40 minutes or so. And, there is death, and there is early on the introduction of the idea that there's a mole amongst them, so there's the possibility for betrayal. But almost none of it lands emotionally, because we just really don't get to know these characters well. And, you could get to know the characters well in an hour and 40 minutes, but it just feels like, they're rushing through everything. We are getting just this sort of bare minimum of explanation for any of these people. And, there are some great actors here. Actors I really like going into this. So I love Sam Richardson, and I've loved him in a lot of things, and I loved him on The After Party on Apple. And if you haven't seen Werewolves Within, you should, because it's a great movie. He's playing Quasi here, who is, a shape changer, but it's like he's the comic relief, and he's not given that funny material here. And I'm a big fan of Casey Rawle, who plays Rachel Garrett. She is a pre-existing character, and that we know that she will become the captain of the Enterprise C. Rawle was terrific on The Amazing Hannibal, and she's been great in a lot of other genre series that shoot in Canada. But here she's kind of stuck playing the stick in the mud, right? She is the character who is representing Starfleet and kind of there to make sure that they don't break the rules too much on this mission. And they give her a little bit of an arc along the way, but it all feels just incredibly thin. It just feels like there's nothing of substance there. And I should back up for a second to talk about my fandom of Star Trek, which is a mid-level Star Trek fan. I've seen a decent amount of Star Trek. I've seen all of the original series and all of Next Gen and all of Picard, first 2 seasons of Discovery. I'm a huge fan of Strange New Worlds. I've seen all of that, and I've seen all the feature films. So I've seen hundreds of hours of Star Trek, and yet there's still hundreds of hours of Star Trek I haven't seen because there's that much Star Trek. But I don't come in with, the there's only one way to do Star Trek feeling. And I didn't have the huge reaction to the trailers for this that I saw some have that are saying, this doesn't feel Star Trek, this tonally is off. I was kind of up for anything. And if they want to do a kind of more both lighthearted, but also trying to be like a spy series, edgier version of Star Trek, I'm open to that. Why not? If it's cool, if it actually works, if it's actually good. But this is not the good version of that. There's a real try-hard feeling with this. It's trying to be stylized. It's trying to be edgy. Everything about the music, everything about the way it's directed and the camera work and how it's constantly moving and, quick edits and snap zooms and whip, cam and it's whipping all around, and it just feels like it's trying to be like, hey, we're moving, we're cool, right? This is fun, but it's not. How could I describe it? Okay, you know how sometimes you watch a movie trailer, and the way the trailer is edited, which is taking any laugh line or intended laugh line and putting it in there, and quick edits, and it makes it feel like the movie's going to be like quip, fast paced, but it doesn't look like it's actually good. And then sometimes you see the movie, you go, oh, well, the movie itself isn't edited at all like that trailer. Star Trek Section 31 is edited, has a film like that kind of trailer. There is a feeling about 15-20 minutes in, I started to realize, oh no, this is going to be most of the movie. That these characters are all going to just be constantly saying little barbs to each other, little quips, but none of it's that clever. And yeah, it just kind of really falls flat, and it's really unfortunate. It's funny because looking at the credits on this show, Craig Sweeney wrote this, and he's written for a lot of good TV. He wrote for Discovery Season 1, but he wrote for a show I really dug, which is the 4400. He wrote for Elementary, and he was working on the series version of Section 31. And then the director, Olatunde Osunsanmi, he's also directed a ton of episodes of Star Trek Discovery, which I realize started a lot stronger than it ended. I dropped off about halfway through. I heard it didn't get better about the point I dropped off, but I really liked the first 2 seasons of that show. But yeah, what they're doing here, the stylistic approach, which I feel like they were trying to make up for the fact that the story was thin or that maybe they had to cut out a lot when they turned it from a series into a movie. It just doesn't work. There are moments it works. There's like a cool shot, for instance, when two characters are talking on communicators. One's at the top of the hill, one's at the bottom. And we do a really cool sort of tracking shot down from the one talking at the top of the hill down to the one at the bottom and, follow that path down the hill. That was cool, has one shot. And if they did a shot like that once in a while, that might be like, oh, that was stylistic. That was interesting. But they try to do stuff like that constantly, and it gets annoying, and it gets in the way of the storytelling. Or maybe it's just trying to cover for the story, but it doesn't really work. There's a lot of things in the story that feel strange because they're trying to have emotional impact, but there's no reason for it to actually have that impact. There are some relationships that are only given to us through tiny dialogue-free glimpses almost, but they're supposed to have a lot of weight to them. And it's like, well, we had to see that. It's a definite example of, show don't tell, because you keep telling me this relationship is really important, but I didn't spend enough time with these characters together to in any way feel that. Like I said, that they're trying for these things with death and betrayal and anything can happen, but it doesn't matter if you're not invested in these characters. The very first scene is pretty strong, which is a flashback scene involving Giorgio when she's young, and some information is revealed that it's like, whoa, that's some heavy stuff to deal with here, but in no way does that match tonally or anything else. The feeling of significance of that opening scene is not echoed in almost anything that follows. And times when they try to slow down briefly to recapture that don't really work because so much of the movie is captured in this I don't know, cycle of trying to feel like fast paced, we're having fun here, aren't we, that it's just not succeeding in. And yeah, so this was kind of a bummer. I mean, again, I'm someone who thinks that Star Trek can be pretty malleable. And one thing I really like about Strange New Worlds is that it's all over the place as far as like, what are you going to get each week? What is the tone of this episode? And they've had really funny episodes, and they've had episodes that have been very offbeat and off kilter, and they've had stuff that's really landed emotionally. But yeah, this does not capture that. It's trying to do something left of center of Star Trek, which is admirable. And maybe the series version, again, I'll always be curious. If they had done the series version they were supposed to do, this could have worked maybe. But the version we get here, yeah, it just feels so hollow. And by the end of it, there's a big celebrity cameo involving someone from Michelle Yeoh's cinematic past that just feels like whatever, because I would be shocked if there's ever a follow up to this movie. I just can't see there being strong enough reaction to it. And of course, they were lucky to get Michelle Yeoh back at this point just to do this movie, but she deserves better, you know? And I didn't even love her character in this movie. I felt like it didn't capture what made her cool on the show. Again, they kind of ratchet it all up, and she's making a lot more sort of snarky remarks. I get it, on Discovery, she made some snarky remarks, and she was that kind of, nefarious slash can we trust her character who would definitely, come in with some little funny barbs here and there. But here everything is just so heightened, and it didn't feel like that character was exactly the same, and it didn't match even that opening scene. And yeah, this was kind of a struggle to get through, unfortunately, in an era where there's been a lot of Star Trek, and some of it has worked and some of it hasn't. And I have not watched a lot of Lower Decks, but I've seen a little bit of Lower Decks and really enjoyed it. I haven't seen any Prodigy. I'm sorry. I need to watch Prodigy at some point. But there's been plenty of Star Trek, and some has been really great, and some has not. And this movie, though, feels like, yeah, a big misfire, unfortunately. Maybe they should have left well enough alone. Once the show couldn't happen for various reasons, I think maybe they should have just moved on, but they didn't. So yeah, it's too bad. What we have here with Star Trek Section 31 is debuting January 24th on Paramount Plus. Hey, maybe I'm wrong, has the person who is, mid-level Star Trek, and there'll be a whole bunch of people that are saying, hey, no, this is totally what I was looking for, but I kind of doubt it. We'll find out. All right, guys, thanks. If you can like and subscribe, that would be great. Take care, live long and prosper.